February 1944. Truck Lagoon still glows faintly behind us, a smear of fire on the horizon. You'd think after last night's bombing the world would still be trembling, but up here on the bridge of USS Iowa, the morning feels almost peaceful. I stand with my hands on the cold railing, watching sailors swab the teak deck like it's any other day. Men joke while checking the hydraulic pressure on turret 2. Someone is arguing about gunnery tables. A lookout leans on the bulkhead, half bored, scanning the empty blue without much effort. Routine. Familiar. The kind of routine that dulls your instincts if you let it. But something beneath that calm is wrong. It starts with a courier handing me a thin stack of recon fragments, half-readable scribbles from scattered scouts who swear they glimpsed smoke trails where no Japanese ships should be. Then I hear one of the radar boys behind me mutter, "What the hell is that?" And I turn just enough to see them sharing a look I've never seen on this ship before. On the scope, between the messy, jittering returns left behind by the night raids, a new cluster of targets forms. Clean, steady, moving with purpose. And just like that, the air changes. Heavy, electric, like history itself is inhaling. I feel it in my chest before anyone speaks. The certainty that whatever's coming toward us isn't some stray patrol boat or wounded destroyer limping out of the harbor. It's something else. Something that shouldn't be there. Something that's about to rewrite the rules we thought governed naval war. If you're watching this, stay with me. Because what happens next isn't just a footnote. It's the moment when doctrine breaks, when assumptions die, and when the ocean itself becomes a proving ground for a new kind of battle. I didn't understand it that morning, standing on Iowa's bridge with salt drying on my lips, but everything that brought us to this point had been set in motion years before I ever saw the Pacific. The men on the other side of the horizon had grown up believing in one thing, Kentai Kessen, the decisive battle. One perfect clash at the perfect distance, where superior crews and superior spirit would carve history into the sea. Their admirals dreamed in ranges of 10 to 15 miles. Not too close, not too far. A realm of optics and nerves where night attacks, long lance torpedoes, and exquisitely drilled gunnery would smash any enemy that dared come within proper battle distance. They trained for that range, lived for it, and built an empire of steel around it. We didn't. We built something colder. Back home, men with slide rules and ink-stained fingers rewrote the language of war. Ballistic tables, production curves, radar equations, not romantic, not heroic, but merciless. To them, a ship was a firing solution and a steel quota. A gun wasn't courage, it was time of flight, shell weight, dispersion patterns. We weren't supposed to win by seeing better. We were supposed to win by not needing eyes at all. And yet, until truck, all of that was still theory. We'd talked, in wardrooms and gunnery briefings, about maximum effective range. We'd read the pamphlets, seen the trials. But there's a gulf between a test range off the American coast and a living sea full of men trying to kill you. Even on Iowa, with the tallest masts and the newest sets, radar was still a thing half the fleet trusted and half the fleet tolerated. The Japanese believed war would be decided where their optics ruled. We believed it would be decided where our machines could reach further than human senses. But at truly extreme range? No one had yet proved who was right. That's why truck mattered. This lagoon wasn't just another anchorage. It was Japan's fortress, their Gibraltar of the Pacific, the place where they hid what was left of their strength. By hitting it, by hunting anything that tried to escape, we weren't just smashing ships. We were dragging two different visions of naval war into the same stretch of ocean. Out there, beyond the edge of our vision, somewhere inside those ghostly radar contacts, an entire doctrine was sailing toward its execution. And if you think you know who had the advantage that day, the proud gunners with their optics or the battleship trusting an invisible beam, stay with me. Because in a few minutes, you're going to see how a single decision turned theoretical maximum range into a death sentence. Spruance's order comes down the voice tube like a stone dropped into still water. Surface action authorized. Iowa and New Jersey will intercept fleeing enemy vessels. For a moment, no one speaks. Surface action, in broad daylight, after a night raid like that? Even our own exec looks stunned. This isn't how the Pacific War is supposed to be fought. Carrier planes strike, battleships wait for darkness or shore bombardment. But Spruance wants us in the chase. He wants steel against steel. And he wants it now. Very well, I say, though my throat feels tight. Bring us to intercept course. The bridge moves instantly. Men straighten. Voices sharpen. Routine evaporates. We shift into the rhythm drilled into us since commissioning. Range tables updated, turrets checked, elevation gears tested, powder temperatures logged. Everything by the book. Everything expected. Except the ocean refuses to play along. The Japanese ships we're hunting, Katori, Mikazuki, Nowaki, aren't visible. Not to binoculars, not to the naked eye. The horizon is clean, a simple blue line pretending nothing dangerous exists beyond it. Then radar speaks. I step behind the operator, leaning over his shoulder. Among the ragged echoes from last night's firestorm, 3 contacts shine steady and undeniable. Clean returns. Consistent bearing drift. Range, too far for tradition, perfect for mathematics. Targets confirmed, the radar man says, trying to sound calm. They're running east. East, away from truck, toward open ocean. Toward safety. If we let them go now, they disappear into the Pacific. If we act, we commit to a battle no gunnery manual ever truly believed would happen. I feel the tension ripple across the bridge. These are the ranges where instructors used to say, in theory the guns can reach, always that word, theory. Useful on paper. Meaningless in real war. Or so we thought. Recommend opening fire, my gunnery officer says, eyes fixed on the plot board. Fire? Someone whispers. At what? We can't see. We don't need to see, the gunnery officer snaps. Solution is solid. And suddenly I understand, this is the fracture point. The moment the old world, the world of optics and visible silhouettes, cracks. I steady my voice. Turret 1, turret 2, commence fire. Full salvo. The order leaves my mouth and the ship seems to inhale. A heartbeat later, Iowa does something no one aboard has ever experienced. She fires at an enemy none of us can see. The ocean jumps. The deck shudders. Flame erupts from the turrets like the breath of some awakened monster. And as those great shells arc into the unseen distance, I know the world has just changed. The moment Iowa's first salvo disappears over the horizon, the bridge goes silent. No cheering, no excitement, only the weight of the unknown. We're firing blind by every old standard, trusting machines more than eyes. And as the shockwave fades from my ribs, reports begin to rush in. Enemy ships changing course. Targets increasing speed. Bearing drift accelerating. They know they're being hunted. I step to the starboard windows, staring into the empty blue as if I could force shapes to appear. Nothing. Not a masthead, not a wisp of smoke. But the radar sees what I cannot. The radar sees everything. Japanese formation splitting, the operator calls. Destroyers weaving, heavy zigzag. Exactly what they trained for. Breakup maneuvers, evasive runs, last-minute torpedo spreads. In their doctrine, distance is safety. Distance is time. But today distance is a trap. A new tremor runs through the deck as turrets 1 and 2 unleash a second salvo. The great barrels recoil, the ship shivering like something alive. I picture those shells screaming across 20,000 yards of empty air, falling toward enemies who think we're still too far to matter. Then the radio intercepts catch fragments, frantic, clipped Japanese voices. One word repeats, strained with disbelief. Meo, Meo. Shell splashes. They can't see us, but they can see the water erupting around them. Katori returning fire, my gunnery officer reports. A chill crawls up my spine. I look again toward the horizon and see nothing. Their optics are staring into a void. They're firing at phantoms. Range? I ask. 19,000 yards. 19,000. Beyond the curve of the Earth. Their shells can't even reach us cleanly, not without losing accuracy to physics itself. But still they fire, because not firing means accepting a truth their navy was never built to face. The destroyers respond next. Mikazuki and Nowaki throw up smoke screens, thick white walls dragging across the ocean like storm fronts. Perfect textbook screens, the kind instructors praised back in their academy days. They're trying to blind us. But radar doesn't care about smoke. Target steady. Solutions unchanged, fire control confirms. And then the worst of it, enemy torpedoes in the water. Long lances. Of course. Japan's deadliest weapon, the pride of their fleet. 40-knot killers with enough punch to gut a battleship. Any other day at this range they'd be a nightmare. But today those torpedoes are slicing through empty sea toward a point we left minutes ago. I grip the railing as another salvo thunders from Iowa's guns. The air tastes like cordite and metal. The sea around us flashes white with recoil. After the fourth corrected salvo, the fire control officer turns to me, voice low. We're walking it in, sir. They're bracketed. And somewhere beyond the horizon, inside a curtain of their own smoke, Japanese sailors finally understand. They are shooting blind. We are shooting like it's training. And the idea of a fair fight dies right there on the open Pacific. You can talk about tonnage, radar ranges, and armor thickness all day, but none of that prepares you for the moment you realize there are men, real men, inside the shapes you're trying to kill. Hit registered, fire control reports. The bridge doesn't cheer. It doesn't move. It just tightens. For a heartbeat, I forget the machinery and think only of the ship on the receiving end. Katori, proud, elegant, built for a navy that believed skill and spirit could bend fate. And somewhere on her bridge stands Captain Sakai, a man I will never meet but can suddenly picture clearly, hands gripping the rail, shouting orders through smoke and confusion, knowing every decision he makes is already too late. Another shockwave rolls through Iowa as we fire again. The sound is monstrous, like thunder ripping out of steel lungs. I brace myself on the bulkhead. The whole world seems to shudder. Reports come in from radio intercepts. Snippets of desperate Japanese commands, frantic corrections, shouted bearings. Their gunners are firing blind. They don't have splashes to correct by. They don't have radar. All they have is the memory of battles fought at ranges where men could actually see the enemy. Mikazuki tries to shield her cruiser. I watch her blip on the radar, sliding between us and Katori like a man throwing himself between a friend and a bullet. A destroyer, a thin-skinned knife of a ship, choosing to eat battleship shells to buy seconds for someone else. Seconds no shell can give them. Destroyer closing, radar calls. Range decreasing. They're making a torpedo run. A suicide charge. Men on that deck are staring straight at us, sprinting to tubes, gripping lines with frozen fingers, knowing full well they won't live long enough to hear the torpedoes hit. Turret 2, fire. The deck bucks. A heartbeat later, a murmur spreads across the bridge. Mikazuki's return signal blooms into chaos. Splinters on the scope. A jagged smear where a ship used to be. Someone behind me whispers, God? Not in triumph. In disbelief. On our gun decks, I know the crews feel it too. They're young, some barely shaving, yet now they're watching the consequences of their training vanish into distant fire. Every time the breech slams shut, every time the blast punches the air out of their lungs, they know a minute later 100 men might be gone. War at this range strips away the illusion of distance. It forces you to acknowledge the truth, that a shell is not just steel and explosive. It is a decision. A sentence. A hand reaching across miles to erase lives you'll never know. I grip the railing harder as another plume of fire erupts from our guns. I'm supposed to be thinking about vectors, firing arcs, bearing drift, but all I can picture is this. Somewhere beyond the smoke, a 19-year-old boy on a Japanese deck hears a whistling in the sky. And he doesn't have time to look up. The moment it happens, there's no cheer, no cry of victory, only a terrible stillness inside me. Direct hit on primary target, fire control announces. Their tone is clinical, but the bridge feels colder than the wind coming through the open hatches. Katori's radar trace shudders, then tilts. Not a clean disappearance, a wounded stagger. Through the haze beyond the horizon, a faint dark smear rises into the air. Someone hands me binoculars. I lift them, though I know I won't truly see her. But imagination fills in what the glass cannot. A column of smoke. A listing hull. A ship dying on a sea she was never designed to fight this way upon. Katori turning uncontrollably, radar confirms. Speed falling, she's done. A whisper escapes me before I can stop it. God help them. Turret 2 roars again. The ship trembles, steady, relentless, but my mind is already far ahead. Inside a steel corridor flooding with smoke, men dragging hoses, shouting for wounded comrades, trying to keep a cruiser alive with pumps that were engineered for battles fought miles closer than this. Then Mikazuki reappears on the radar, what's left of her. Destroyer attempting final charge, someone reports. Of course they are. Even as Katori folds in on herself, even as the ocean floods her decks, her escort will not abandon her. It's not tactics anymore. It's devotion. A sailor's instinct to die facing the danger rather than turning from it. Range 13,000 yards, gunnery calls. I watch her blip race toward us, fast, reckless, hopeless. Fire. 3 shells leap toward the invisible destroyer. The gun crews don't see the impact, but radar does. The contact splits, fragments, dissolves. A ship dies in a single heartbeat. Nawaki alone survives the storm. Slippery, fast, she darts through a squall, vanishing into rain and spray. Iowa and New Jersey track her, but she's too small, too desperate, too lucky. She slips out of our firing arcs and disappears into the vast Pacific, leaving only a flicker of confusion on the radar screens. Last contact lost, the operator says. And then the message from New Jersey comes over voice radio, calm, almost detached. firing at 20.3 miles. New record for surface engagement. 20.3 miles. Beyond imagination. Beyond doctrine. Beyond everything naval warfare used to be. I look out over the gray sea spreading ahead of us, quiet again, deceptively calm. 3 ships destroyed. 1 escaped. American losses, none. It doesn't feel like triumph. It feels like witnessing a door slam shut on an entire era. A moment when the ocean itself admitted a new ruler. And the strangest part? I know we've only just taken the first step into a world that will never look the same again. In the hours after the guns fall silent, Iowa returns to her steady heartbeat. Engines humming, bulkheads creaking, sailors moving with the muted stiffness of men coming down from battle. But something in the air has changed. Not victory. Not celebration. Something heavier. I stand alone on the starboard catwalk, watching the Pacific slide past in long gray sheets. The sun is low now, smearing gold across the water. If someone stumbled onto the deck at this moment, they might think the day had been peaceful. Routine. Forgettable. But I can still feel the recoil tremble in my bones, and I know the truth. A line was crossed today that no navy can uncross. Word of the battle spreads through the ship with a strange quietness. No boasting. No swagger. Men whisper about the ranges, 19,000 yards, 20,000 over 20.3. Numbers that once looked like academic fantasies on gunnery charts. Now they're attached to real explosions, real ships breaking apart, real men swallowed by smoke. Someone hands me a decoded intercept. Japanese survivors, what little there were, have spoken of invisible fire, of shells arriving before sound, of an enemy they could not see and could not understand. One line stops me cold. We fought an enemy from another era. I fold the message and slip it into my jacket. Because deep down I know they're right. Later, as I walk past the plotting room, I overhear one of our ensigns, barely 20, murmuring to his friend, "It felt like cheating." His voice cracks when he says it, guilt fighting pride inside him. I want to pull him aside, tell him war doesn't care about fairness. But before I can, he adds, "It's like we killed something bigger than ships." He doesn't know how right he is. Because somewhere in Tokyo, even now, fragments of reports are crawling their way through channels. Confused radar sightings, impossible engagement ranges, the last transmissions of doomed ships. Officers will gather around tables, scratching notes, debating possibilities. At first they'll deny it. Then they'll fear it. Then they'll understand. Not just that we can shoot farther, but that the very foundation of their naval doctrine, decades of training, belief, pride, shattered in a single morning. Their navy taught them victory lived at the visible horizon. Today we fought beyond it. I imagine some Japanese lieutenant standing over a map, tracing the path of Katori's final minutes, realizing there was no tactic that could have saved her. No maneuver. No courage. No spirit. Just physics. Just radar. Just cold mechanics that don't blink or hesitate. And somewhere in all that paperwork, some officer will finally write the words they've been afraid to say. We are out of time. We are out of era. I exhale into the wind, letting the salt sting my face. I know history won't remember the tremor in my hands, or the hollow inside my chest, or the faces of the boys below decks who are trying to convince themselves they should feel proud. History will write numbers, distances, tonnage sunk. But here on this steel deck, the truth is simpler. Today wasn't the death of 3 ships. It was the end of a belief, a myth carried across the Pacific on pride and optics. And somewhere in the silence after battle, I realize something else. The future of war began this morning, and none of us truly understand it yet.